The rain clung to the windows like desperate hands, tapping a rhythmic, mocking sound as I stood there, clutching a chipped glass of water, my fingers trembling around it. The dining room was packed, my father at the head of the table, my siblings lined up along the sides, their polished smiles already cracking with the strain of tonight's performance. Birthdays were supposed to be celebrations. Tonight felt like an execution. "Look at her," my father barked, the venom in his voice slicing through the brittle laughter in the room. He didn't even bother to look at me as he raised his glass in a mock toast. The biggest failure in this family. A murmur of laughter followed, some low, some sharp, all cutting. My heart clenched painfully against my ribs. I swallowed hard, feeling the burn of humiliation lodge somewhere deep inside me. "I regret ever raising you," he thundered, slamming his glass on the mahogany table so hard that the chandelier above us quivered. There was no air left in the room. My sisters giggled behind their hands. My older brother shook his head, a look of pity, or was it disgust, etched across his face. Even my mother, sitting rigidly by my father's side, wore that same blank expression she always wore when things got ugly, the kind of practiced attachment that said this isn't my fault. And yet, somehow, I remained standing. I didn't cry. I didn't run. I just stood there, feeling the betrayal like knives sinking into my skin, one by one. "Maybe if you had tried harder, you'd be sitting here proudly instead of embarrassing us," my brother added, tipping his wine glass toward me with a lazy sneer. The others laughed again. Even the younger ones who didn't understand the full weight of the words laughed. Because that's what you did in our family. You laughed when someone was bleeding, especially if it was me. I opened my mouth to speak, to say something, to defend myself, maybe, but my throat was tight, my voice trapped beneath years of trying to be good enough. And that's when it happened. A chair scraped against the hardwood floor. It wasn't loud, but in the dead silence that followed my father's latest insult, it might as well have been a gunshot. I turned.
"Grandpa."
Slowly, deliberately, he removed his thick glasses, the same glasses he wore religiously every day, and folded them neatly on the table. Every head turned toward him, the mocking smiles faltering slightly. Grandpa never interrupted. Grandpa never raised his voice. Grandpa just sat quietly, observing.
"Until now."
He pushed himself up with one hand on the table, his old joints creaking slightly, and cleared his throat. "Let me tell you," he said, his voice calm but carrying an authority that silenced the entire room, "what really happened." The air crackled. Even the rain outside seemed to pause. I blinked, frozen. The house I had grown up in, the walls that had heard every slammed door, every whispered insult, suddenly felt like it was leaning in, waiting. "You all think you know everything," Grandpa continued, taking a slow step toward me. "But you don't know the first thing about sacrifice. About love. About her."
He pointed directly at me.
The blood drained from my father's face. "She's not the failure," Grandpa said, his voice growing stronger with every word. "She's the only reason any of you are sitting here, fat and happy." Murmurs stirred around the table. Confused. Defensive. "What are you talking about, Dad?" My father snapped, trying to laugh it off, but his voice cracked just slightly. Grandpa didn't flinch. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper, yellowed and worn at the edges. He tossed it onto the table with a sharp flick of his wrist. "Read it," he said, eyes burning into my father's. No one moved. So Grandpa read it himself, loudly,
Clearly.
every word echoing in the stunned silence. The letter was from years ago, from a time I was too young to remember properly. It detailed how, when my father's business had gone under and we were on the brink of losing the house, it was me, only 14 years old then, who had secretly taken a part-time job, hidden the money in Grandpa's safekeeping, and helped pay the bills behind their backs. It had been my money that kept the lights on, my money that kept food on the table, my money that saved the family from collapsing. I felt dizzy, like the ground had tilted under me. My siblings sat there, wide-eyed and silent. My mother covered her mouth, her hand trembling. And my father, his mouth opened, then closed. then opened again. No words came out. Grandpa stepped closer, his voice a low rumble filled with something I hadn't heard in a long time: pride. She didn't ask for praise, he said. She didn't demand gratitude. She just gave. While all of you took. I felt tears sting my eyes, but I held them back. This wasn't a moment for tears. This was a moment of truth. Grandpa placed a firm hand on my shoulder, squeezing it gently. She's not the failure, he repeated. She's the reason you're all still standing. The silence was crushing. No one moved. No one spoke. Outside, the rain finally broke, pounding against the roof with wild, chaotic fury, like the heavens themselves were roaring in approval. And for the first time in my life, I stood taller. Not because someone gave me permission, but because the truth finally did. For a long second, no one moved. My father's hand hovered above his plate, frozen. My mother's face had gone pale, the blood draining from her cheeks. My siblings stared at me like they were seeing a stranger. I didn't move either. I didn't have to. Grandpa's words hung in the air, heavier than anything else in the room. You think money just magically appeared? Grandpa said, his voice quieter now but sharper, like the edge of a blade. While you sat around mocking her, she was fighting for you all, sacrificing without even being asked. The pride in his voice, it broke something inside me. For years, I had lived believing I wasn't enough. Now I realized I had been more than enough all along. My brother shifted in his chair, clearing his throat awkwardly. I didn't know. No, Grandpa said. You didn't care to know. My sister looked at me, guilt flashing in her eyes. She opened her mouth, maybe to apologize, but nothing came out. Grandpa turned toward me fully. You don't owe them a single explanation, sweetheart. I bit the inside of my cheek, fighting the emotions clawing at my throat. I didn't want revenge. I didn't want to hurt them the way they hurt me. But I wanted something different now. Freedom. I think I'm done, I said, my voice steady, even as my heart pounded. Done begging for a seat at a table where I was never wanted. The words slipped out so naturally, it surprised even me. Grandpa smiled, small but proud. He patted my shoulder once and said, "Good." I placed the glass I had been clutching back on the table, gently, calmly, and turned toward the door. Panic broke the silence behind me. Wait, honey, my mother said, standing up. Her voice cracked. Don't leave like this. I paused at the doorway. The girl who would have turned around, desperate for a crumb of affection, was gone. I glanced back over my shoulder and said, not cruelly, not bitterly, just truthfully, you didn't want me before. Remember? Then I walked out. Into the rain. Into the unknown. But also, finally, into myself. The air outside was sharp and fresh, filled with the scent of wet earth and possibility. I didn't know exactly what was waiting for me. But for the first time, I wasn't scared. Grandpa caught up to me under the porch. He held out his old raincoat and chuckled. You're going to need this. Life's messy out there. But it's yours now. I laughed, a real laugh, and slipped the coat over my shoulders. It was too big, smelled faintly of old leather and peppermint, but it felt like armor. We stood there together in the rain for a moment, me and the only person who had ever truly seen me. I'm proud of you, kiddo, Grandpa said. His voice was gruff, but his eyes shone with kindness. Thank you, I whispered.
And I meant it.
Not just for tonight. For everything. As we stepped off the porch into the rain, I knew. This wasn't the end. It was the beginning. The next morning, the sun broke through the heavy rain clouds like a promise. I stood by Grandpa's old pickup truck, watching the steam rise from the wet asphalt. He came out of the house with 2 mugs of coffee, handing one to me. Big day ahead, he said with a wink. I sipped the bitter coffee and smiled faintly. Big day. Because today, I wasn't looking back anymore. I called an old friend, Grandpa said casually, leaning against the truck. He owns that little bookstore downtown. Said he needs a manager. My heart skipped. A bookstore. A fresh start. You don't have to say yes, Grandpa added. But you deserve a place where you're valued. A place that feels like home. I swallowed hard against the lump rising in my throat. For once, someone believed in me without asking me to prove anything first. I want it, I said quickly, before doubt could creep in. I really want it. Grandpa grinned. Then let's not waste time. The bookstore was small but magical. Sunlight streamed through tall, dusty windows. The scent of old pages and wood polish filled the air. It was quiet, peaceful, nothing like the sharp chaos of the house I had left behind. Mr. Jennings, the owner, was a kind-eyed man in his 70s. He shook my hand warmly. "You come highly recommended," he said, his voice raspy with age. "If Walter believes in you, that's good enough for me." I laughed nervously. "I hope I can live up to it." "You don't have to live up to anything," Mr. Jennings said gently. "Just be yourself." Those words felt like a balm on wounds I didn't realize were still bleeding. For the first time, I didn't have to pretend. I didn't have to shrink myself to fit into someone else's idea of who I should be. I spent the day organizing shelves, chatting with customers, breathing in the peacefulness like medicine. When evening came, Grandpa picked me up, his truck rattling like an old friend. "How was it?" he asked, peeking at me sideways. I smiled, a deep, genuine smile. "It was good. Really good." He chuckled. "Told you. Life's messy, but it's also full of second chances if you're brave enough to take them." As we pulled away from the bookstore, I caught my reflection in the side mirror. Not the failure they called me. Not the burden they sneered at. Someone new. Someone free. It didn't take long for the news to reach them. Small towns had fast mouths. And soon, my family realized I wasn't coming back. At first, it was silent. No calls. No texts. Only the cold absence of people who once claimed to love me. But then the messages started. First, my brother. A simple, awkward text.
"Hey.
You okay?" Then my mother. "Your room is still there if you need it." And finally, my father. A voicemail so short, it almost sounded rehearsed. "Come home. We need to talk." I sat behind the counter at the bookstore, staring at my phone, heart pounding. The old me would have dropped everything at the first breadcrumb of attention.
But not now.
Not anymore. Grandpa noticed the tension in my hands as I gripped the counter edge. He didn't say anything, just waited, patient and calm. After a long pause, I slipped the phone into my pocket. "They didn't care when I needed them," I said quietly. "They only care now because they lost control." Grandpa nodded, his face thoughtful. "Sometimes," he said, "the people who hurt you the most aren't monsters. They're just broken themselves."
I thought about that.
It didn't excuse what they did, but it made it easier to let go of the bitterness. A week later, they showed up, right outside the bookstore, in the middle of the Saturday rush. My mother stepped through the door first, wearing a stiff smile. Behind her, my father and siblings trailed like awkward shadows. I froze behind the counter. Customers glanced between us, sensing the tension. "Sweetheart," my mother said, voice sticky sweet. "We were just passing by and thought we'd say hello." Passing by? The lie was so thin it barely held together. I looked at them, really looked, and for the first time, I didn't see giants towering over me. I saw small, scared people. People who didn't know how to say we were wrong. My father cleared his throat. "You doing good here?" he asked stiffly, like the words burned his tongue. I nodded once. "Very good, actually." He looked down at the floor, ashamed.
"Good."
Not because I wanted him to suffer, but because maybe shame would teach him what cruelty never could. My brother shuffled forward. We miss you." His voice cracked slightly, and for the first time, I saw real regret in his eyes.
I didn't know what to say.
Part of me wanted to scream. Another part just wanted to cry. Instead, I smiled.
Small, soft, genuine.
"I'm happy now," I said. "And I hope you find your happiness too." It wasn't forgiveness. Not yet. But it was a beginning.
And that was enough.
My family stood there, unsure, awkward, waiting for more. Apologies.
Tears.
Reunions. But I didn't give them that. I gave them peace. and kept the rest for myself. They left quietly, and as the door swung shut behind them, a weight lifted from my chest. Grandpa stepped up beside me, grinning. "Well done, kiddo." I let out a shaky breath and laughed. It wasn't revenge. It wasn't bitterness. It was something far better. Freedom. The bookstore became more than just a job. It became home. A quiet haven where I could finally hear my own thoughts, and like what they were saying. Every morning, I unlocked the door, feeling a sense of pride swell in my chest. The regular customers learned my name. Little kids rushed in after school, dragging sticky fingers across the shelves. Elderly couples wandered in, holding hands, looking for old novels and new memories. And I, the so-called biggest failure, was exactly where I was meant to be. One afternoon, as golden sunlight spilled through the windows, Grandpa walked in holding a brown paper bag. He set it on the counter with a playful grin. "What's this?" I asked, wiping my hands on a cloth. "Open it," he said. Inside was a small, hand-carved wooden plaque. Simple. Beautiful. It read, "Hope's Corner, managed with heart." My throat tightened. I traced the letters with my fingers, feeling tears prick the corners of my eyes. "You're not just surviving anymore," Grandpa said. "You're building." I didn't have words big enough to thank him, so I just stepped around the counter and hugged him tight. For a long moment, he held me like he had when I was a little girl, scared of the storms. And just like back then, he made me believe everything would be all right. Later that week, something unexpected happened. A letter arrived. Handwritten. No return address. I opened it with shaking hands. Inside, my father's familiar scrawl.
Clumsy.
Uneven. I was wrong. We were all wrong. You didn't fail us. We failed you. I don't expect forgiveness. I just wanted you to know, I am proud of you. I sat back, stunned. Not because it changed everything, but because it meant he was trying. In his own flawed, broken way. And for the first time in a long time, I felt something toward him that wasn't anger. Not trust, not yet. But maybe a small, flickering hope. Seasons changed. Leaves turned gold, then brittle brown. Snow blanketed the little town. And through it all I stayed.
Grew. Laughed. Loved.
I started volunteering at the library on weekends, tutoring kids who struggled to read. I hosted cozy book club nights at the store, where strangers became friends. I planted flowers outside the shop in spring, their colors shouting against the gray sidewalks. I built a life, not the one my family planned for me, but one I chose with both hands open wide. One evening, standing at the front window, I watched the town square light up with holiday decorations. Grandpa sat behind me, reading an old Western novel, a cup of cocoa in his hand. And I realized I wasn't waiting anymore. Not for approval. Not for love. Not for anyone's permission to be happy. I had given all those things to myself.
Piece by piece.
Brick by brick. And I had built something unshakable. Something real. My reflection in the window smiled back at me. Not broken. Not bitter. Stronger.
Softer.
Wiser. I turned to Grandpa and said, "Thank you for believing in me when no one else did." He chuckled, setting down his book. "Kiddo, you didn't need me to believe in you. You just needed to believe in yourself." I laughed, wiping a tear from my cheek. Because he was right. And as the first snowflake drifted past the window, melting softly against the glass, I whispered to myself, I made it. Not in spite of them. Not because of them. But because I finally chose myself. And that was more than enough.
Liam Haynes leaned back against the sleek leather interior of his car, the engine humming beneath him like a beast waiting to be unleashed. The city lights blurred as he pressed the accelerator, the roar of the engine drowning out the protests of his passenger. "Liam, slow down," his friend, Ryan, shouted over the wind. "Relax." Liam grinned, his dark hair whipping across his forehead. "We're just having fun." The streets of downtown gleamed with rain-slick pavement as Liam swerved dangerously close to the curb. His Maserati skidded into a perfect drift, earning cheers from the group of onlookers gathered at the illegal street race. But the moment of triumph was short-lived. Blue and red lights flashed in the distance, accompanied by the wail of sirens. "Cops!" Ryan yelled. Liam's grin didn't waver. "Then let's give them a show." The night ended in disaster. Liam was dragged home by the police, his father's face dark with fury as he bailed him out yet again. "This is the third time this month, Liam," Robert Haynes said, his voice tight with restrained anger. "When are you going to grow up?" Liam shrugged, leaning lazily against the doorway. "I told you, Dad. I was just having fun." "Fun?" Robert's fist slammed onto the mahogany desk, making Eleanor flinch. "You've turned this family into a laughingstock. Do you have any idea what the media is saying about us?" Eleanor stepped in, her voice softer but no less stern. "Liam, you're not a child anymore. Your actions have consequences, not just for you but for all of us. Nate looks up to you. Is this the example you want to set for him?" Liam's younger brother, Nate, peeked around the corner, his wide eyes filled with both admiration and fear. Liam glanced at him but quickly looked away, guilt briefly flickering across his face before he pushed it down. "What do you want me to do?" Liam asked, his tone sarcastic. "Quit living my life and become your perfect little puppet?" Robert's jaw tightened. "You've left me no choice. If you won't take responsibility on your own, I'll make you." Liam sat in stunned silence as his father laid out the plan. "You're going to marry Emma," Robert said, his tone leaving no room for argument. "The maid?" Liam scoffed, his disbelief quickly turning into anger. "You've lost your mind. She's the only one in this house who knows the meaning of hard work," Robert said. "And maybe, just maybe, she'll teach you something about humility." Liam turned to his mother, hoping for support, but Eleanor simply sighed. "This isn't just about teaching you a lesson, Liam. It's about protecting this family. Your actions have put us all at risk, and we need stability." "Stability?" Liam laughed bitterly. "You think forcing me to marry some nobody is going to fix everything?" Eleanor's gaze hardened. "That nobody saved your brother's life when you couldn't be bothered to answer your phone." Liam froze. "What?" Eleanor's voice softened, but the weight of her words was crushing. "The night Nate had that fever, none of us could reach you. Emma stayed with him all night, cooling his fever and keeping him alive until the doctor arrived." Liam swallowed hard, the guilt he had buried deep finally clawing its way to the surface. The next morning, Liam wandered into the garden, his mood sour. He had barely slept after his parents' ultimatum, and now he was expected to meet the woman who was supposed to fix him. The absurdity of it all made his blood boil. Emma was trimming the hedges, her hair tied back in a loose braid. She worked methodically, her focus entirely on the task at hand. She didn't notice Liam until he cleared his throat. "Hey," he said, crossing his arms. Emma looked up, startled. Her eyes, a calm shade of gray, met his. "Mr. Haynes," she said softly, straightening. "Did you need something?" Liam frowned. "Don't call me that. It's Liam." She nodded but didn't respond, waiting for him to speak. "So," he said, awkwardly shoving his hands into his pockets. "You're the one they want me to marry?" Emma's expression barely changed, but Liam thought he saw a flicker of discomfort. "Yes," she said simply. He studied her for a moment, searching for some sign of ambition or manipulation. "And you're okay with this? Marrying someone you don't even know?" Emma hesitated, then shrugged. "It's not about what I want. Your parents think this is best for you. For the family." Liam laughed bitterly. "Right? Because the family name is all that matters." Emma turned back to the hedge, her voice quiet but firm. "You can think what you want, but this isn't about me. It's about you. And if I'm being honest, I don't think you're ready for it." Her words struck a nerve. Liam opened his mouth to argue, but she had already returned to her work, dismissing him as if he didn't matter. Over the next few days, Liam watched Emma from a distance. She moved through the mansion with quiet efficiency, her presence almost invisible. Yet, everyone seemed to respect her, something Liam couldn't quite understand. She was just a maid after all. What made her so special? One afternoon, Liam found her in the kitchen, scrubbing a stubborn pan. He leaned against the doorway, his curiosity finally outweighing his irritation. "Do you ever take a break?" he asked. Emma glanced at him briefly before returning to her task. "Not really." "Why not?" he pressed. "My parents pay you, right? You could probably slack off and get away with it." Emma set the pan down and turned to face him. "Is that what you do?" Liam blinked, caught off guard. "Well, yeah, probably. That's the difference between us," Emma said calmly. "I take pride in my work, even if it's just scrubbing pans." Her words stung more than Liam cared to admit. He left the kitchen without another word, but her quiet strength lingered in his mind. The engagement announcement was fast approaching, and the pressure in the Haynes household was palpable. Robert and Eleanor insisted on a grand party, inviting business partners, socialites, and the media to witness the union that would supposedly save their family's reputation. Emma, meanwhile, kept her head down, enduring the whispers and judgmental stares of the other staff. She had expected resistance, but the weight of it was heavier than she anticipated. Liam, on the other hand, grew increasingly restless. He hated the idea of being paraded around like a trophy, and he hated even more that Emma seemed so indifferent to it all. "You don't have to just take this, you know," he told her one evening as they set up for the party. Emma glanced at him, her expression unreadable. "What do you mean?" "This whole arrangement," Liam said. "You could fight back. Say no." Emma sighed. "And what would that accomplish? Your parents would still find a way to force you into something you don't want. At least this way, we both know where we stand." Liam frowned, frustrated by her logic. "You're too passive, and you're too impulsive," she shot back. "Maybe that's why this might actually work." The engagement dinner was a lavish affair. The ballroom glittered with crystal chandeliers, and the air buzzed with the chatter of the Haynes family's wealthy guests. Liam and Emma sat side by side at the head table, their awkward silence masked by polite smiles. As the night wore on, Liam grew more and more agitated. He could feel the judgmental eyes of the guests, hear their whispers about Emma's background and his reputation. "She's the maid, isn't she?" one woman murmured. "What a scandal," another said. "But I suppose the Haynes family had to do something to rein him in." Liam's grip on his wine glass tightened. He glanced at Emma, expecting her to look embarrassed or upset, but she sat calmly, her expression unreadable. After the dinner, Liam confronted her in the hallway. "Doesn't it bother you?" he demanded. "Does what bother me?" Emma asked. "The way they talk about you, like you don't belong here." Emma's gaze softened, but her voice remained steady. "I've heard worse, and honestly, they're right. I don't belong here." Liam frowned. "Then why?" "Because sometimes," she interrupted, "you have to do things you don't want to survive. You, of all people, should understand that." Liam had no response. For the first time, he saw Emma not as the quiet maid forced into his life, but as someone who had faced struggles he couldn't begin to imagine. Unbeknownst to either of them, danger was already closing in. Victor, the man Emma had spent years running from, had finally found her. He stood in the shadows of the mansion's garden that evening, his dark eyes fixed on the windows where the engagement dinner was winding down. "She thought she could hide," he murmured to himself. "But I always find what's mine." Victor didn't wait long to make his presence known. The following evening, while most of the staff were preparing for a charity gala, Emma found a small envelope slipped under her door. Her hands trembled as she picked it up. The handwriting was unmistakable, Victor's jagged scrawl. Inside was a single note: "You can't run forever. I'll see you soon." Emma's heart pounded in her chest. For a moment, the room seemed to close in around her. She thought she had escaped him. She thought the Haynes mansion was her sanctuary. But now, the walls that once felt protective seemed to trap her. She stuffed the note into her pocket and left her room, her mind racing. She needed to warn someone, to prepare. But who could she trust? Liam found Emma later that night, pacing the back garden. The moonlight cast a silvery glow on her face, and he noticed the tension in her shoulders. "You're not exactly subtle," he said, leaning against a nearby tree. Emma jumped, spinning to face him. "What are you doing here?" "I could ask you the same thing," he replied. "You've been acting weird all day. What's going on?" Emma hesitated. She had spent the past few months keeping her past buried, determined to keep the Haynes family out of her problems. But as she looked at Liam, she realized that he wasn't the same careless man she had met weeks ago. There was something different about him now, something that made her think he might actually listen. "It's someone from my past," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "He's dangerous, and he found me." Liam straightened, his playful demeanor vanishing. "Who? What does he want?" Emma sighed, her hands trembling. "His name is Victor. I used to work for him, if you can call it that. He ran a criminal operation, and I found out what he was doing. When I tried to leave, he didn't take it well. So I turned him in, and now he's out for revenge," Liam finished, his voice tight. Emma nodded, tears brimming in her eyes. "I thought I could start over here. But now, I don't know if I'm safe anymore." Liam's jaw tightened. "You're safe," he said firmly. "As long as I'm here, no one's going to hurt you." The charity gala the following night was a glittering affair, with the who's who of the city gathered in the mansion's grand ballroom. Liam spent most of the evening keeping an eye on Emma, who was helping manage the event from behind the scenes. She looked calm, composed, but he could see the nervous energy beneath her exterior. Halfway through the night, Liam's instincts were proven right. Out of the corner of his eye, he spotted a man slipping through the crowd, his face partially obscured by a wide-brimmed hat. There was something about his posture, the way he moved, that set Liam on edge. It wasn't long before the man found Emma in the garden, where she was taking a moment to breathe. Well, Victor said, stepping out of the shadows. "The runaway bride." Emma's blood ran cold. "Victor," she said, her voice shaking. "I told you I'd find you," he sneered. "You've been playing house with the Haynes family, haven't you? Thought their money would keep you safe?" Before she could respond, Liam appeared behind her. His voice was low, dangerous. "You need to leave. Now." Victor smirked, clearly unimpressed. "And who are you?" "The babysitter. I'm the guy who's going to make sure you never come near her again." Liam shot back, stepping between Victor and Emma. Victor chuckled. "You've got guts, kid. I'll give you that. But you have no idea what you're getting into." Liam didn't waver. "Try me." Before the situation could escalate further, security arrived, alerted by Liam's earlier suspicion. Victor was escorted off the property, but his parting words sent a chill through the air. "This isn't over, Elena." Not by a long shot. After Victor's departure, Emma broke down in the library, the weight of her fear finally overwhelming her. Liam found her there, curled up in an armchair, her face buried in her hands. "Hey," he said softly, sitting across from her. "It's okay. He's gone. For now," Emma whispered, her voice trembling. "But he'll come back. He always does." Liam reached out, hesitating for a moment before placing a hand on hers. "Then we'll deal with him. Together." Emma looked up, her tear-streaked face filled with doubt. "Why do you care? This isn't your problem." "Because you're not just the maid to me anymore," Liam said. You're more than that. And I'm not going to let anyone hurt you." For the first time, Emma saw a side of Liam she hadn't expected. Protective, vulnerable, and genuine. Over the next few weeks, Liam and Emma worked together to prepare for Victor's inevitable return. Liam reached out to his father's contacts in law enforcement, sharing what little Emma could remember about Victor's operation. Meanwhile, Emma dug through her old files, hoping to find anything that could bring Victor down for good. Their late-night strategy sessions in the library became a strange routine. They argued, laughed, and shared stories about their lives, slowly building a bond neither of them had expected. One night, as they pored over documents, Liam leaned back in his chair and studied Emma. "You're stronger than you think, he said. Emma looked up, surprised. "What do you mean?" "I mean, you've been through hell, and you're still standing," Liam said. "That's more than I can say for a lot of people." Emma smiled faintly, her walls beginning to crack. "You're not as shallow as I thought you were." "Careful," Liam teased. You're starting to sound like you actually like me. Emma rolled her eyes, but the warmth in her gaze lingered. Victor didn't wait long to strike again. One evening, as Liam was heading to a business meeting, his car was sabotaged. The brakes failed, sending him skidding dangerously close to a collision. He managed to escape unscathed, but the message was clear. Victor wasn't just targeting Emma anymore. When Liam returned to the mansion, he found Emma waiting for him in the foyer, her face pale with worry. "What happened?" she asked. "Victor," Liam said grimly. "He's stepping up his game." Emma's hands clenched into fists. "This is my fault. He's after me, not you." Liam shook his head. "He made it my problem the moment he came after you. We're in this together now, Emma." The tension reaches a boiling point when Victor kidnaps Nate to lure Emma out of hiding. The final showdown takes place in an abandoned warehouse, where Liam and Emma, backed by law enforcement, face Victor and his men. The stakes are higher than ever, with Nate's life hanging in the balance. The Haynes family's worst fears were realized when Nate disappeared. It happened on a rainy evening, just as the family sat down for dinner. A maid rushed into the dining room, pale and shaking. "Nate's gone," she stammered. "We found his room empty, and this was on his bed." She handed Robert a small envelope. Inside was a photograph of Nate, tied to a chair, his face streaked with tears. Beneath it, a single sentence scrawled in sharp black ink. "Bring Elena. Come alone, or the boy dies." Emma's hand flew to her mouth as her knees nearly buckled. Liam was at her side instantly, steadying her. "It's him," she whispered, her voice trembling. "Victor." Robert slammed the note onto the table. "Call the police," he barked. "No," Emma blurted out. "He said to come alone. If he sees the police, he'll hurt Nate." Liam stepped forward, his jaw tight. "We're not doing this his way. We're going to find Nate and we're going to end this." The family gathered in the study, the air thick with tension. Robert paced back and forth, barking orders into his phone, while Eleanor sat in stunned silence, clutching a photograph of Nate. Liam leaned over a map spread across the desk. "He said to come alone," he muttered. "That means he's expecting you, Emma." Emma paled. "You're not seriously suggesting I go?" "It's a trap," Liam said. "But if we play this right, we can turn it against him." Robert looked up, his face grim. "We don't have time for half-baked plans, Liam. My son is out there, and he's my brother," Liam snapped. "You think I'm going to sit here and let Victor win?" The two men locked eyes, but it was Emma who broke the silence. "I'll do it," she said softly. Everyone turned to her, stunned. "I'll go to him," Emma continued, her voice steady. "If it means saving Nate, I'll do whatever it takes." "No," Liam said firmly. "You're not doing this alone." Emma looked at him, her eyes filled with both fear and determination. "Then what do we do?" The address Victor had included in the note led them to an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of town. It was a sprawling, decaying structure, its windows broken and its walls covered in graffiti. The air was thick with the smell of rust and oil. Emma stepped out of the car first, her heart pounding. She could see Victor's silhouette through the broken glass of the upper windows. A single flickering light inside cast eerie shadows across the room. Liam followed close behind, ignoring Emma's protests. "I told you, I'm not letting you do this alone," he said. Emma sighed but didn't argue. Together, they entered the warehouse, their footsteps echoing on the concrete floor. Victor's voice rang out from the shadows. "Ah, Elena." Right on time. The sound of Nate's muffled cries reached Emma's ears, and her heart sank. She spotted him tied to a chair in the center of the room, a single overhead bulb casting harsh light on his small, trembling form. Victor stepped into the light, flanked by two men armed with pistols. "You've caused me a lot of trouble, Elena," he said, his smile cold. "But tonight, it ends." Liam stepped in front of Emma, his body tense. "Let the boy go, Victor. This is between you and her." Victor chuckled. "Ah, the gallant fiancé. How noble of you." He gestured to his men. "But I'm afraid it's too late for negotiations." As the men raised their weapons, a loud crash echoed through the warehouse. The sound of shattering glass drew everyone's attention to the upper windows, where a team of police officers burst in, rappelling down ropes with precision. "You think I wouldn't call for backup?" Liam said, a triumphant grin spreading across his face. Chaos erupted. Victor's men opened fire, their shots ringing out in the cavernous space. The police returned fire, their movements swift and coordinated. Liam grabbed Emma's hand and pulled her behind a stack of crates. "Stay down," he ordered, his voice urgent. "What about Nate?" Emma cried. Liam peeked over the crates, his eyes scanning the room. Victor was dragging Nate toward the back exit, using the boy as a shield. "I'll get him," Liam said, his voice firm. "No!" Emma grabbed his arm. "It's too dangerous." Liam turned to her, his expression fierce. "He's my brother. I'm not losing him." Liam's fists clenched as he squared off against Victor, the cold concrete floor beneath them slick with spilled oil. Victor was taller and more imposing, but Liam didn't back down. His mind raced. This wasn't just about saving Nate anymore. It was about proving to himself and to Emma that he could be the person they needed. Victor sneered. "You're out of your depth, kid. Do you even know what kind of man you're dealing with?" "I don't care who you are," Liam shot back. "You don't touch my family." With a sudden burst of speed, Victor lunged at Liam, sending them both crashing to the floor. Liam grunted as the impact knocked the wind out of him, but he managed to twist free, rolling to his feet. The fight was brutal. Victor's punches were heavy and unrelenting, but Liam fought with a ferocity fueled by desperation. He dodged a wild swing and countered with a solid punch to Victor's jaw, sending the older man staggering. Emma, meanwhile, worked frantically to untie Nate. The boy's sobs broke her heart, but she kept her voice steady. "It's okay, Nate. I've got you. Just hold still." "Emma, hurry," Liam called out, his voice strained as he blocked another blow from Victor. Finally, Emma freed Nate from the ropes. She pulled him into her arms, shielding him as the fight raged on. "Stay behind me, sweetheart," she whispered, her hands trembling but steady. Victor growled, his eyes darting to Emma and Nate. "You think this is over?" he spat. "I'll make you regret this." Liam saw the distraction and took his chance. With a surge of adrenaline, he grabbed a nearby metal rod and swung it at Victor's legs. The man crumpled to the ground with a pained shout. "Not today," Liam muttered, panting as he stood over Victor. Police officers rushed in moments later, their weapons drawn. 2 officers cuffed Victor while the others secured his remaining men. Liam turned to Emma, his chest heaving. "Is Nate okay?" Emma nodded, her arms still wrapped protectively around the boy. "He's safe, thanks to you." The days following Victor's capture were a blur of police reports, media coverage, and emotional recovery. The Haynes family, once fractured by mistrust and resentment, began to heal in the wake of the crisis. Robert and Eleanor, who had always struggled to connect with Liam, saw him in a new light. For the first time, Robert placed a hand on his son's shoulder and said, "I'm proud of you." Liam, unused to praise from his father, simply nodded. But the words stayed with him. Emma, meanwhile, found herself adjusting to a new reality. For years, she had lived in fear of Victor, always looking over her shoulder. Now, with him behind bars, she felt an unfamiliar sense of freedom. One evening, as she stood on the balcony overlooking the garden, Liam joined her. "You okay?" he asked, leaning on the railing beside her. Emma nodded. "It still feels strange. Not having to run anymore." Liam glanced at her, his expression soft. "You're not alone anymore, Emma. You don't have to face anything by yourself." She smiled, her eyes glistening. "Thank you, Liam, for everything." "You don't have to thank me," he said. "I should be thanking you. You've changed me more than I ever thought possible." The Haynes mansion was transformed into a haven of light and warmth for the wedding. The once forced arrangement had evolved into something genuine, something real. The guest list was small, just family and a few close friends, but the intimacy of the event made it all the more meaningful. Emma walked down the aisle in a simple but elegant gown, her steps steady and her heart full. Liam waited for her at the altar, his eyes never leaving hers. As the officiant spoke, Emma's thoughts drifted to everything they had overcome. Her fears, his recklessness, the danger that had almost torn them apart. But as she looked at Liam, she saw the man he had become. Strong, kind, and unflinchingly loyal. When it came time to exchange vows, Liam's voice was steady. Emma, you've shown me what it means to be brave, to care about something bigger than myself. I promise to protect you, to stand by you, and to make you laugh when life feels too heavy. You're my reason to be better, and I'll never stop trying to deserve you. Emma's voice was soft but resolute. Liam, you've taught me that not everyone runs when things get hard. You stayed when it mattered most, and you reminded me what it feels like to trust. I promise to stand by you, to believe in you, and to love you, for who you are and who you'll become. The applause was warm and genuine as they exchanged rings, sealing their vows. For the first time in their lives, both Liam and Emma felt like they belonged, together, as partners. In the weeks that followed, the Haynes family settled into a new rhythm. Liam took on more responsibility in the family business, proving to his father that he was ready to lead. Emma, no longer a maid, began exploring her own passions, finally free to dream about the future. One afternoon, as Liam and Emma walked hand in hand through the garden, Nate ran up to them, his face glowing with excitement. "Can we play soccer now?" he asked, tugging at Liam's sleeve. Liam grinned. "Only if you're ready to lose." Emma laughed, watching as the two brothers raced toward the open field. For the first time in years, she felt a sense of peace, a feeling that no matter what came next, they could face it together. And as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting the garden in a warm golden glow, Emma knew that the life she had once dreamed of was finally within her reach. Clara rushed into Adrian's room, her pulse racing as the boy's weak cries pierced the silence of the house. The sight before her made her freeze. Adrian lay on his bed, his small body drenched in sweat, his face flushed crimson. His little hands clutched the bedsheets, and his chest heaved with shallow, rapid breaths. "Adrian," she whispered, her voice trembling as she hurried to his side. She placed a hand on his forehead and immediately recoiled. He was burning up, his temperature was dangerously high. Clara's mind raced. Mr. Taylor wasn't home. He was away on one of his endless business trips, leaving her as the sole caretaker. She had no way to contact him, and Adrian's condition was worsening by the second. She grabbed the thermometer from the nightstand, fumbling with it as her hands shook. 104 degrees, she murmured in disbelief. Fear gripped her chest. "I have to act fast." She rushed to the bathroom, filling a basin with cold water and grabbing a clean towel. Memories of her brother Lucas's fever surfaced as she worked. How she had desperately tried to save him. How powerless she had felt. This time, she vowed, she wouldn't let history repeat itself. Returning to Adrian, she gently placed the cold compress on his forehead. His body flinched at the touch, a weak whimper escaping his lips. "Stay with me, sweetheart," she said, her voice breaking. "You're going to be okay. Promise." Meanwhile, miles away, Mr. Taylor sat in a luxury airport lounge, staring blankly at his laptop screen. The canceled meeting had been a blow to his meticulously planned schedule, and frustration gnawed at him. His assistant had suggested he head home early, but he'd brushed off the idea. "There's always work to do," he had said. Yet now, as he sat alone, an uneasy feeling crept over him. He checked his phone, scrolling through messages, but there was nothing from Clara. He shrugged it off, convincing himself that no news was good news. By the time his delayed flight finally took off, the unease had grown into a gnawing sense of dread. Back at the house, Clara fought to keep Adrian stable. The fever spiked again, and the boy's trembling intensified. Panic clawed at her, but she forced herself to stay calm. She replaced the compresses, murmuring soft reassurances as she worked. "Come on, Adrian," she said, her voice firm despite her fear. "You're stronger than this." She stayed by his side through the night, her exhaustion mounting with each passing hour. Memories of her brother haunted her, but she pushed them aside, focusing entirely on Adrian. Failure wasn't an option. When Mr. Taylor finally arrived home in the early hours of the morning, the house was eerily quiet. His calls for Adrian went unanswered, and a sense of dread settled over him as he climbed the stairs. Pushing open Adrian's door, he froze at the sight before him. Clara sat beside the bed, her face pale and drawn, holding a damp cloth to Adrian's forehead. The boy's small form looked fragile under the covers, his breathing still shallow but steadier than before. "What happened?" Mr. Taylor demanded, his voice breaking as he rushed to his son's side. "What happened?" Mr. Taylor demanded, his voice trembling as he knelt beside Adrian. His son looked so fragile, his pale skin and shallow breaths tearing at his heart. "Clara, what's going on?" Clara stood, exhausted but composed. "Adrian developed a high fever last night, Mr. Taylor," she explained. "It was bad, dangerously high. I couldn't reach you, so I did everything I could to stabilize him." Mr. Taylor's gaze darted between Adrian and Clara. The weight of her words hit him hard. He had been away, prioritizing business, while Clara had been here fighting to save his son. The realization filled him with guilt and gratitude. What have you done so far?" he asked, his voice softening. "I used cold compresses, monitored his temperature, and kept him hydrated," Clara replied. "The fever broke an hour ago, but he's still weak. I called the family doctor. He'll be here soon." Mr. Taylor's chest tightened. "Thank you, Clara. I don't know how I'll ever repay you." "You don't have to," she said simply, her voice steady despite her exhaustion. "Adrian is like family to me. I couldn't let anything happen to him." Dr. Reynolds arrived shortly after sunrise, carrying his medical bag and an air of calm authority. He examined Adrian thoroughly, checking his vitals, hydration levels, and overall condition. As the hours dragged on, Clara's exhaustion deepened. She had spent the last 6 hours battling Adrian's fever, replacing compresses, and trying to coax small sips of water past his parched lips. Every time she thought the fever might break, it surged back with a vengeance. The room felt suffocating, the air heavy with the smell of sweat and the faint tang of antiseptic. Clara opened the window slightly, letting in the cool night breeze. She hoped it would help Adrian breathe easier. His small body trembled with each shallow breath, and her fear mounted with every passing moment. Her thoughts turned to Mr. Taylor. She tried calling his phone earlier, but it had gone straight to voicemail. She'd left a message, her voice trembling as she explained Adrian's condition, but there had been no response. She cursed his business trip under her breath. "This isn't something you can fix with a meeting or a deal, Mr. Taylor," she murmured to herself, her tone bitter. "Your son needs you." Adrian whimpered softly, pulling her attention back to him. She knelt by his bedside, brushing a damp strand of hair from his forehead. "I'm here, sweetheart," she whispered. "You're not alone." Miles away, Mr. Taylor sat on the plane, his eyes closed but his mind restless. He had an odd feeling he couldn't shake, a gnawing sense of unease that had been with him since he'd left home. Normally, he thrived on business trips. The negotiations, the power plays, the deals, they gave him purpose. But this trip felt different. His mind kept wandering back to Adrian. He thought about the way his son had clung to him when he'd left, his small hands gripping his father's suit jacket. "Do you have to go, Daddy?" Adrian had asked, his big brown eyes filled with sadness. "I'll be back before you know it, buddy," Mr. Taylor had replied, ruffling Adrian's hair. "Be good for Clara." Adrian had nodded, but there had been something in his expression, something Mr. Taylor couldn't quite place. Now, sitting thousands of feet in the air, he regretted brushing it off. The plane landed, and Mr. Taylor's phone buzzed with missed messages and emails. He glanced through them, his chest tightening when he saw Clara's voicemail. "Mr. Taylor, it's Clara. Adrian's very sick. He has a high fever, and I'm doing everything I can to bring it down. But please call me back as soon as you can." His stomach dropped. Adrian was sick? How sick? Why hadn't he checked his phone earlier? Panic surged through him as he dialed Clara's number, but it went unanswered. "I'm coming home," he muttered, grabbing his suitcase and heading straight for the airport. By the time Mr. Taylor arrived home, it was nearly dawn. The house was eerily quiet, the kind of silence that felt oppressive rather than peaceful. He dropped his suitcase by the door and called out, "Adrian? Clara?" No response. He took the stairs 2 at a time, his heart pounding in his chest. When he reached Adrian's room, he froze. Clara was sitting beside the bed, her head bowed, her hands clutching a damp cloth. Adrian lay motionless under the covers, his small face pale but peaceful. "What happened?" Mr. Taylor demanded, his voice breaking as he stepped into the room. Clara looked up, startled by his sudden arrival. Her eyes were red-rimmed, her face etched with exhaustion. "Mr. Taylor," she said softly, standing. "Adrian had a dangerously high fever. It broke about an hour ago, but it was a long night." Mr. Taylor rushed to his son's side, his hands trembling as he touched Adrian's forehead. It was cooler now, the fiery heat replaced by a faint warmth. Relief flooded him, but it was quickly followed by guilt. "Why didn't you call me sooner?" he asked, his voice cracking. "I should have been here." Clara hesitated, her gaze steady but weary. "I tried calling, but I couldn't reach you. I didn't want to wait for an ambulance. I was afraid he wouldn't make it. I did everything I could." Mr. Taylor looked at her, his emotions a tumultuous mix of gratitude and self-reproach. "You saved him," he whispered. "Clara, I don't know how to thank you." Clara shook her head. "There's no need to thank me. Adrian means a lot to me. I couldn't let anything happen to him." After Dr. Reynolds left later that morning, Mr. Taylor found Clara in the kitchen, tidying up the remnants of the night's ordeal. She moved slowly, her exhaustion evident in the way her shoulders slumped. "Clara," he said, his tone softer than usual. "Can we talk for a minute?" She turned, surprised. "Of course, Mr. Taylor." He gestured for her to sit, and they both took seats at the small kitchen table. For a moment he was silent, unsure how to start. "You were incredible last night," he finally said. "I didn't realize how much you've done for this family. I feel like I don't know enough about you." Clara hesitated, her fingers brushing the edge of the table. "There's not much to tell," she said quietly. "I grew up in a small village. My parents worked hard, but we didn't have much. My younger brother, Lucas, was everything to me." Her voice faltered, and Mr. Taylor leaned forward. "What happened to him?" he asked gently. Clara's eyes glistened with unshed tears. "He got sick when he was 7. We didn't have a doctor nearby, and by the time we reached help, it was too late. I tried to save him, but couldn't." The pain in her voice was palpable, and Mr. Taylor felt a pang of regret for never asking about her life before. "I'm so sorry, Clara," he said. "I can't imagine how hard that must have been." She nodded, her gaze distant. "That's why I couldn't let anything happen to Adrian. When I saw him like that, it brought everything back. I couldn't lose him too." The next few days were a delicate balancing act for Clara and Mr. Taylor. Adrian's fever had broken, but he was still weak, his small body recovering from the battle it had fought. Clara stayed by his side every waking moment, her attention unwavering. She brought him small bowls of soup, gently coaxing him to eat, and ensured he drank enough water to stay hydrated. Mr. Taylor, uncharacteristically, took time off work. He couldn't bring himself to leave Adrian again, not after what had happened. He sat by his son's bed, reading him stories or simply holding his hand as Adrian drifted in and out of sleep. One evening, as the sun cast a warm glow across the room, Adrian stirred. His eyes fluttered open, and he looked up at his father and Clara with a weak but grateful smile. "Thank you for taking care of me," he said softly. Clara leaned forward, brushing a strand of hair from his forehead. "You're welcome, sweetheart. You're such a brave boy." Mr. Taylor's throat tightened as he watched the interaction. "How are you feeling, buddy?" he asked. "Better," Adrian replied, his voice still faint. "But I don't want you to leave again, Dad." The words hit Mr. Taylor like a freight train. He took a deep breath, guilt and resolve intertwining in his chest. "I'm not going anywhere," he promised. "Not anymore." As Adrian recovered, he grew even closer to Clara. The bond between them deepened in ways Mr. Taylor hadn't noticed before. Adrian would light up whenever Clara entered the room, and he clung to her warmth and gentle presence. One afternoon, while Clara helped Adrian piece together a puzzle, he asked, "Clara, do you have kids?" The question caught her off guard, and for a moment, she didn't know how to respond. "No, sweetheart, I don't," she said finally, her voice soft. "Why not?" Adrian asked innocently. Clara hesitated, her heart aching with the weight of memories. "It just didn't happen," she said gently. "But I think of you as very special to me. You're like family." Adrian beamed, his little hands reaching for hers. "I think you're family too." Late one night, after Adrian had fallen asleep, Mr. Taylor found himself in the living room, staring at an old photo of him and his late wife holding Adrian as a baby. The house had been filled with love and laughter back then. But after his wife's passing, he had thrown himself into work, convincing himself that providing financially was the best way to honor her memory. He hadn't realized how much he'd neglected the emotional needs of his son, or his own. As he gazed at the photo, his mind wandered to Clara. She had stepped into their lives quietly, unassumingly, but her impact had been profound. She had filled a void he hadn't even recognized, providing Adrian with the love and care he desperately needed. Mr. Taylor resolved to change. His son's close call had been a wake-up call he couldn't ignore. He would become the father Adrian deserved. Over dinner one evening, Clara opened up further about her past. It had taken a little coaxing from Mr. Taylor, but she finally shared the full story of her childhood. "I grew up in a small, close-knit village," she began, her voice tinged with nostalgia. "We didn't have much, but we had each other. My brother Lucas and I were inseparable. He was my best friend." Her expression darkened as she continued. "When Lucas got sick, I did everything I could to take care of him. My parents were frantic, but we didn't have access to a doctor. By the time we got him help, it was too late." Clara's voice broke, and she looked down at her hands. "I felt like I failed him. That's why, when I saw Adrian so sick, I couldn't let it happen again. I couldn't lose him too." Mr. Taylor reached across the table, placing a hand on hers. "You didn't fail Lucas, Clara. And you didn't just save Adrian, you saved me too. I'll never forget what you did for us." A week after Adrian had fully recovered, Mr. Taylor called Clara into the living room. Adrian was seated beside him, holding a small, beautifully wrapped box. "What's this?" Clara asked, her eyes wide with surprise. "It's a thank you," Mr. Taylor said. "From both of us." Adrian grinned and handed her the box. "Open it, Clara." Inside was a delicate gold locket. When Clara opened it, she found a photo of Adrian on one side and an inscription on the other. "To Clara, with love, for being our angel." Clara's breath hitched, and tears welled in her eyes. "I don't know what to say," she whispered. "You don't have to say anything," Mr. Taylor said. "You're more than just an employee to us, Clara. Your family." Adrian leaned into her side, wrapping his small arms around her. "We love you, Clara," he said simply. Clara hugged him tightly, her tears spilling over. "I love you too, Adrian." The events of that fateful night became a turning point for the family. Mr. Taylor began spending more time at home, prioritizing his son over his work. He learned to cook Adrian's favorite meals, helped him with homework, and even joined him and Clara for movie nights. As for Clara, her role in their lives transformed. She wasn't just a maid anymore. She was a cherished part of the family, someone they depended on and valued deeply. Years later, as Adrian grew older, he often looked back on that night as a defining moment. It was the night his family truly came together, bound by love, gratitude, and the selfless care of one extraordinary woman. And though life moved forward, none of them ever forgot the night that changed everything.